My wife let her male assistant into her exclusive private lounge. Victoria Quinn's private lounge was a symbol of her power, and also a testament to our intimacy. Besides her, only I had ever been allowed inside. But I found her assistant brazenly inside under the pretext of helping. In that moment, I knew this marriage couldn't last. Someone wanted to challenge the rules so they couldn't blame me for rewriting the ending myself. Later, Victoria Quinn, eyes red, asked me why I had undercut Quinn Corp, betraying them so thoroughly. I just smiled nonchalantly. Love is gone. I have to protect my own interests, don't I? One today, I went to Victoria Quinn's company to meet her at the agreed time. We were supposed to go to the Quinn family home together for dinner. Victoria's office was on the top floor. Past the secretarial area lay her exclusive space. The outer part was the reception area and her desk. The inner part housed her private lounge connected to a study. That place held special significance. It was her absolute private domain. Apart from me, no one could casually step inside. But when I entered Victoria's office today, I saw the door leading to that private area slightly ajar. Gently pushing it open, the scene inside stunned me. Ethan Larkin was in there. I knew him, the new assistant Quinn Corp had hired. Right now, he was standing by Victoria's desk, organizing documents. On the bar nearby sat a freshly brewed cup of coffee. He seemed a little surprised to see me, but his face quickly broke into a smile, eager to please. "Mr. Sterling, you're here. President Quinn asked me to wait for her here." He paused, and to help her with a few personal matters. He gestured towards the documents in his hand and the coffee. President Quinn said she'll be right back. I didn't speak, just looked at this man who shouldn't be here. His words felt like a sharp sting. Personal matters. What personal matters of Victoria's required his handling? In this place practically sealed off from outsiders except for me, I remembered Victoria saying this was where she could completely relax, where she only showed her truest self to me. But now, Ethan Larkin stood here, organizing her documents, brewing her coffee, with an air almost like the man of the house. Though he appeared humble, his eyes and tone subtly hinted at his special status with Victoria. I once thought my marriage to Victoria was different from the typical arranged marriages between families, that we had genuine affection. But looking at it now, it seemed we weren't so different from those couples after all. 2. I suppressed the turmoil welling up inside, refusing to lash out at Ethan Larkin. That would make me look petty, like I cared too much about him. I simply regarded him coolly. "Oi, you're not needed here. Get out." The smile froze on Ethan Larkin's face. He probably hadn't expected me to be so direct. A flicker of embarrassment crossed his eyes, but he quickly lowered his head. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." Then he put down the documents and coffee and quickly left the lounge. I stood in the empty room. His presence seemed to linger in the air, making me feel physically uncomfortable. I walked to the window, watching the bustling traffic below, but my mind couldn't find peace. A few minutes later, Victoria returned. She looked surprised to find me standing alone by the window. "Sincere, you're here. Where's Ethan?" I turned around, looking at her. I told him to leave. "Victoria, have you forgotten the rules of this lounge?" My tone was calm. Victoria paused, then brushed it off casually. "Oh, that. I just had him come in quickly to find a file for me. It was just for work, don't overthink it." She tried to put her arm around my shoulder. "He's new. Probably doesn't know the rules." I evaded her touch, looking directly into her eyes. "Victoria Quinn, this isn't about whether he knows the rules or not. And you know what this place means to us. I don't want a third person casually entering. This is the first time." My voice was low, and I expect it to be the last. "I will not tolerate my private space being invaded by anyone. And no matter who it is, for whatever reason." The easy expression vanished from Victoria's face. She looked at me, her eyes complicated. After a few seconds of silence, she nodded. "Okay, I understand. It won't happen again." Her tone sounded sincere enough, but I wasn't reassured. 3. The atmosphere was heavy on the drive to the Quinn family home. Victoria tried several times to start a conversation, but I responded tersely. At dinner, we maintained a veneer of harmony in front of the elders, but we both knew deep down something had changed. Back at our own home, Victoria finally couldn't hold back. She hugged me from behind, resting her chin in the crook of my neck. "Sincere, are you still angry about this afternoon?" Her voice held a hint of weariness and pleading. "Ethan really is just my subordinate. I have no other intentions towards him." I didn't pull away, just said softly, "Victoria, what I care about isn't who he is, nor whether you have other intentions towards him." I turned to face her. "What I care about is boundaries, the exclusivity that should exist between us. Your private lounge is our space, just like this home, and I don't want others intruding so easily. It makes me feel like our relationship is no longer special." Victoria looked deeply into my eyes. "I'm sorry, Sincere, and I was thoughtless. I didn't consider your feelings." She took my hand. "And rest assured, nothing like this will ever happen again. That lounge, besides you, no one else can just walk in," she promised me solemnly. The peace didn't last long before new trouble arose. This time, the news came from my assistant, Zachary Shaw. Zachary had been with me for many years, loyal and capable, and he had his own information channels within Quinn Corp. While reporting on work, Zachary mentioned casually, as if in passing, "Son, I heard President Quinn recently gave Ethan Larkin an invitation to the Summit Private Club. Say apparently told him he could bring friends along to experience it." The Summit Club? I knew the place, an exclusive haven for the city's top magnates and elites. Membership screening was incredibly strict. Non-members couldn't even get past the door. Victoria was a long-standing member. We occasionally went together. Sometimes she'd give the rare guest invitations to important business partners, or, as a very high honor, to a select few core executives within the group. But to Ethan Larkin, an assistant who had just arrived, and letting him bring friends? Zachary continued. Ethan Larkin seemed quite pleased. He posted photos on his social media feed, visible only to a select group, and some colleagues saw them and are gossiping privately, and saying President Quinn really gives him special treatment, and that he's already entered her inner circle. My heart sank, a chill spreading through me. What on earth was Victoria playing at? Did she casually bestow this symbol of status and connection, this and privilege, upon a young male subordinate? This went beyond simply crossing boundaries. Had she forgotten her promise? Or did she simply not care? Ethan's showboating added fuel to the fire. His petty intentions were crystal clear. Trying to elevate his status, making others think he had a special relationship with Victoria. Fine. If you want to play the privilege game, then I'll show you what real privilege looks like. I picked up the phone and called my father's secretary, Lawrence Lee, a senior executive at the Sterling Group. "Secretary Lee, do me a favor. On the Summit Private Club, book all guest passes for the next month, along with several key exclusive booking slots. To it under the Sterling Group's name. Say it's a benefit for group executives and their families. Sonny can release the news publicly, make it high profile." Lawrence Lee acted immediately. The Sterling family's power and influence were more than sufficient. The Summit Club was naturally happy to grant this favor. Soon the news spread. Sterling Group had booked out the Summit Club's main resources for the near future as a reward for its executive team. Suddenly, Sterling Group's grand gesture became the talk of the town, and Ethan Larkin's and precious invitation instantly became meaningless, even laughable. When the entire Sterling Group executive team could freely bring their families, what did his little and special treatment amount to then? His planned display of status and implication completely backfired, making him a laughingstock instead. Word was, when he tried to take his friends there on the intended day, he found he couldn't book any decent spot. All the prime times and areas were reserved by Sterling. He ended up leaving crestfallen. This was my way of telling everyone, especially Victoria and Ethan Larkin, who truly held the resources and power in this circle, who was the rightful master of the Quinn household, by name and by right. This time, I chose to pull the rug out from under them. No direct confrontation, yet more powerful than any argument. 5. My counterattack had a significant effect. Ethan Larkin visibly deflated at the company. The murmurs of admiration and envy that had previously surrounded him turned into subtle mockery and distancing. The fragile halo of unspecial status he had just begun to build was ruthlessly shattered by me. A few days later, Victoria came home looking grim. She walked in radiating suppressed anger, but I didn't give her a chance to erupt, merely asking calmly what she wanted for dinner. My composure seemed to take her aback. The accusations she had prepared died on her lips. She just loosened her collar irritably. Whatever. The atmosphere that evening was tense. I knew Ethan Larkin must have gone to her complaining. Sure enough, the next day I heard a more detailed version from Zachary. Apparently, Ethan had sought out Victoria, looking aggrieved, his eyes red-rimmed, appearing pitiful and helpless. He claimed he was just happy to get the invitation, wanting to experience the atmosphere, with no ulterior motives. He didn't know why Mr. Sterling would do such a thing, mobilizing vast resources just to target a junior assistant like him. Now he couldn't hold his head high at the company. Colleagues were laughing at him behind his back. He felt deeply wronged and upset. His words painted him as an innocent victim, and me as someone making a mountain out of a molehill, petty and vindictive. Zachary hadn't found out Victoria's reaction, but I could guess, given her inexplicable protective instinct towards the underdog. Especially when the person appeared so helpless, she most likely believed him, and would feel I had gone too far. I sneered inwardly. Ethan Larkin's theatrics weren't sophisticated, but they often worked on people like Victoria. She was always easily swayed by appearances, especially when her pitiful, protective instincts were triggered. 6 that weekend, Victoria said to me, "Sincere, tonight, Ethan will be stopping by." I was reading a financial magazine. I looked up at her words, my gaze devoid of warmth. "What for?" "He wants to apologize to you in person." Victoria sounded hesitant. "Odd about the club incident last time. He feels you misunderstood, and so I think it's best if everyone clears the air to avoid awkwardness at the company later." I put down the magazine. What did I misunderstand? That he was flaunting the privilege you gave him everywhere? Or that you intended to use this to boost his status? Victoria looked uncomfortable. "Sincere, it's not what you think. Giving him the invitation was partly a reward for his recent hard work. And partly, I wanted him to gain some exposure, which would help his career. And I really had no other intentions." I stood up. "Whether you had other intentions or not, you know best. Since you want him to come, let him come. As it happens, I have a few things to say, too." That evening, Ethan Larkin arrived as expected. Dressed in a well-fitting light gray suit, hair meticulously styled, he looked sharp. His eyes were still slightly red, as if he'd struggled to contain his emotions. Upon seeing me, he immediately bowed slightly, his voice apologetic. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry. At about last time, I was wrong. When I shouldn't have posted those photos online and caused misunderstandings. Since I was just genuinely excited, I didn't think it through. Please forgive me." He put on an act of sincere repentance. If I didn't know his character, I might almost have been fooled by his earnest display. Victoria looked at me expectantly, hoping I would accept the apology. I ignored Ethan Larkin and looked at Victoria instead. An apology isn't necessary. Whether I accept it or not is unimportant. I turned to Ethan Larkin, my gaze sharp. "Mr. Larkin, I want you to understand something. At Quinn Corp, do your job properly. Don't covet what doesn't belong to you, and certainly don't try to challenge boundaries you shouldn't." Then I looked back at Victoria, my tone resolute. "On my boundaries, I made them perfectly clear last time. I don't want any more ambiguous actions that blur the lines. If there's a next time, you'll bear the consequences yourselves." With that, I ignored their stiff expressions and walked straight up the stairs. 7. After that night, the atmosphere between Victoria and me dropped to freezing point. Though we still lived under the same roof, communication dwindled. When we did speak, it was usually about trivial daily matters. Before bed one night, we argued again. She accused me of being too harsh towards Ethan Larkin. Even if he made a mistake, you shouldn't have been so overbearing. And the club incident, you were too high profile. Unusing so many resources like that was a complete waste. I was in the study reviewing documents. I looked up at her words. Waste? I closed the file, my tone laced with sarcasm. Victoria Quinn, you still think the problem is me wasting resources? And not you, casually giving away a privilege that should belong to us as a couple, or at least be under my control. To a scheming outsider? Victoria raised her voice. Tonight's different and told you. It was a reward for an outstanding employee, and we've given summit invitations to others before, I retorted. Outstanding employee? What has Ethan Larkin done? Does he deserve it? Victoria Quinn, can you honestly say you didn't have other motives? My question left her momentarily speechless. She tried to defend herself. I just felt it wasn't easy for him as a newcomer, and his superior. Showing some extra consideration is normal. Her tone even hardened. I will continue to look out for him as appropriate in the future. As president of the company, I believe I have that authority, I said calmly. And I also need to reconsider whether there's any point in continuing this marriage. Victoria stared at me, eyes wide with shock. Her face instantly turned ugly, her voice changing pitch, sincere. After all these years together, you'd say something like that so casually over this? I met her furious gaze. It's you who made me feel that I'm not irreplaceable in your heart. Since that's the case, of course, I must seriously consider whether I should persist. Seeing the determination in my eyes, she seemed to panic, her chest heaving violently. Finally, as if deflated, she said stiffly, I promise you I'll keep my distance from Ethan Larkin from now on. Outside of work, there will be no more unnecessary contact.
Sarah, you satisfied?
Don't talk about divorce anymore. She gritted her teeth as if making a huge concession, but I knew this was just a temporary truce. Victoria reluctantly agreed to my demand. She seemed to intentionally keep some distance from Ethan Larkin, at least within the company. But this didn't change Ethan's situation. After the Privilegin incident, life at the company was already difficult for him. Zachary was a smart and loyal subordinate. He understood my intentions. Although I never gave explicit instructions, Zachary always found ways to create minor difficulties for Ethan Larkin at work. Not outright bullying, but enough to make him feel pressured and isolated. Ethan Larkin's plan to climb the ladder using Victoria had failed. Instead, his previous boasting had attracted considerable jealousy and ostracism. His work suffered from frequent errors, and his mood darkened. He looked somewhat worn down, having lost his initial spirited confidence. I was aware of this, but I didn't intervene or stop it. This was the path he chose. He had to bear the consequences. The turning point came one afternoon. Victoria was visiting a department and happened to walk in as Ethan Larkin was being harshly criticized by his direct supervisor for a work mistake. The supervisor was a company veteran, strict and quite blunt in his speech. Ethan Larkin stood there, pale-faced, lips tightly pressed together, looking utterly wretched. Victoria witnessed this scene firsthand. According to bystanders, President Quinn's expression turned very sour, but she only cast a cold glance at the veteran employee before leaving without a word. But I knew this scene had struck the softest yet most stubborn corner of Victoria's heart. That shadow concerning her late younger brother. She always felt her brother had suffered injustice and unfairness, leading to his tragic end. She had an almost obstinate urge to defend young men who seemed defeated or in need of protection, especially if this young man, in her eyes, bore some resemblance to the brother in her memory. Ethan Larkin's embarrassment and silence hit her trigger point precisely. The scales within her tipped once again. 9 that evening, Victoria returned home radiating hostility. "Sincere Sterling," she practically snarled. "Do you have to push people this far to be satisfied?" I frowned. "Oh, what are you talking about?" she retorted angrily. "Ain't you know exactly what I'm talking about? What did he do that was so wrong? For you to suppress him like this within the company? Did you see how humiliated he was today? The state he was in reminded me of my brother." She blamed the so-called ostracism Ethan faced entirely on me, even bringing her brother into it. Anger flared in me too. Whatever Ethan Larkin encounters at the company is due to his own competence and behavior. Where did you see me ordering anyone to bully him? And stop bringing up your brother. Ethan Larkin is your subordinate, not a substitute for your brother, and your misplaced protective instincts are completely misguided." She scoffed. "Oh, my protective instincts? I think you're just ruthless, the great scion of the Sterling family, used to being high and mighty. Can't stand seeing others strive. Can't tolerate the slightest setback. Is it that everyone less fortunate than you must be trampled underfoot?" And her words were like daggers, stabbing deep into my heart. I looked at this woman hurling vicious accusations at me because of an outsider. Was this really the wife I had loved so sincerely? I lost the energy to even argue back, feeling only absurdity and exhaustion. A few days later, I heard Victoria had transferred Ethan Larkin to the president's office as her special assistant. As for the supervisor who had once sharply criticized Ethan Larkin, he was soon reassigned to an insignificant department under some pretext, and Zachary, my assistant, was also moved by Victoria from his position where he could access core information. Victoria had made her stance clear through her actions. She chose to protect Ethan Larkin, dealing with those she perceived as having bullied him. She was making a statement to me. The Cold War between us escalated completely. Victoria moved into the guest room. Later, she started spending most of her time at her apartment near the company. I didn't ask her to stay, nor did I question her. Not having to face her unjust accusations, I actually felt a sense of relief. But she didn't stop challenging my boundaries. She began having Ethan Larkin handle more of her personal affairs. She had him coordinate with the family driver and housekeeper, arrange her private schedule. She even sent him to our home to pick up or drop off her personal belongings. Once Ethan Larkin let himself in using the passcode. He claimed President Quinn had asked him to retrieve a file she forgot at home, along with some changes of clothes. Although he stood just inside the doorway, his posture still deferential. His eyes held a barely perceptible glint of smugness and testing. I had the housekeeper give him the items, not exchanging a single word with him myself. Closing the door, I felt a profound sense of powerlessness. "Victoria, must you keep prodding me like this?" After that, I refused all her attempts at communication. I ignored her calls, disregarded her messages. Since she chose to protect that outsider at my expense, so be it. 11 Victoria's distance and Ethan Larkin's rise naturally didn't escape notice. Ethan began subtly showcasing his working closeness with Victoria, sometimes posting a photo from the office during late hours on social media, captioned with something like "working hard with the boss, fulfilling." Sometimes dropping hints in company conversations about his involvement in one of President Quinn's key decisions, or occasionally mentioning some of President Quinn's personal preferences offhandedly. He was no longer boasting directly like before, but using more veiled methods to invite speculation. I remained indifferent to it all. I stopped paying attention to Ethan Larkin's latest schemes, nor did I dwell on Victoria's attitude. When disappointment reaches its peak, all that remains is cold clarity. I began reviewing business dealings related to Quinn Corp, looking for competitive angles. I needed to prepare an exit strategy for myself. Victoria thought sacrificing me could buy her the peace or a protection she desired. Ethan Larkin thought he had won. Very well. Sooner or later I would make them pay the price. 12. Another Quinn family dinner arrived. Eleanor Quinn specifically called me, her tone gentle, insisting I attend. I knew she wanted to mend the relationship between Victoria and me, so I agreed. As usual, I went directly to Victoria's office, planning to head to the Quinn residence with her. When I reached the top floor, her secretary informed me President Quinn was in the private lounge. I walked towards that familiar door. This time, it was closed. I knocked. Victoria's voice came from inside. "Come in." Pushing the door open, I once again saw the person I didn't want to see. Victoria was sitting on the sofa, reading a document, and Ethan Larkin was sitting right beside her, reporting on work. That spot used to be mine. Hearing the door open, both looked up simultaneously. Seeing it was me, Victoria's expression turned cool. "Hey, have a seat here for a moment. I still have some things to finish." I didn't sit. I just stood there, watching them. Victoria frowned and gestured for Ethan Larkin to get up. Ethan hesitated. "President Quinn, there are still some final data points left to report," Victoria said lightly. "Let's go to a private booth at the campus cafe and continue the report there." Then she said to me, "Only you can rest here. Meet me at the campus entrance in 20 minutes. She left me in this, her most private lounge. Then took Ethan Larkin to a cafe booth for a private meeting. But what could I say? Didn't Victoria leave the president's lounge for me? I had to admit, Victoria certainly knew how to humiliate me. I watched their departing backs. Victoria didn't even glance back at me. As Ethan Larkin passed me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile seemed to touch his lips. I sighed at my treatment, even letting out a small laugh. I calmly accepted it all. 13. On the way to the Quinn residence, Victoria and I exchanged almost no words. She must have known what her earlier actions meant to me, but she didn't care, even casually bringing up the importance of tomorrow's meeting, as if taking Ethan Larkin to the cafe to hear his report was the most normal work procedure imaginable. I just silently watched the scenery outside the window, my decision already made. The atmosphere at the Quinn family dinner maintained its usual surface harmony. Eleanor Quinn tried to create conversation topics between Victoria and me, attempting to ease the tension. Arthur Quinn discussed company matters with Victoria. I ate quietly, occasionally responding to Mrs. Quinn's remarks. After dinner, everyone sat in the living room drinking tea and chatting. Victoria's phone suddenly rang insistently. She answered it, said a few words, and her face changed dramatically. "What? How could this happen? Have you found out who did it?" Her voice grew louder, filled with disbelief and angry shock. After hanging up, she immediately received several messages. She read them quickly, her fingers turning white from the force of her grip. Eleanor Quinn asked worriedly, "Victoria, what's wrong?" Victoria looked up, staring intently at me. Her eyes were filled with shock, fury, and a trace of bewilderment. Our group's major development project on the east side. Her voice was somewhat hoarse, and most critical parcel of land was snatched out from under us. And one of our key partners suddenly announced their withdrawal. One have turned around and partnered with our main competitor instead. She paused, struggling to utter the last few words. And rumor has it, the Sterling Group was behind it. All eyes instantly focused on me. Eleanor Quinn looked at me, stunned. Arthur Quinn's brow furrowed. Victoria stared at me with complex emotions. "Sincere, tell me this isn't true. It's just a misunderstanding, right?" I met her gaze calmly, even with a slight smile. "It's true. Sincere did it." 14. "Why?" Victoria's voice was ragged. "Sincere, why would you do this? When that project is incredibly important to Quinn Corp. Do you know what this means for the group? We're husband and wife. How could you? Husband and wife?" I cut her off, my tone icy. "So when you allowed that man to slowly erode our trust and boundaries, step by step, then you let him freely invade my private space, even my home? When you turned on me with harsh words, even publicly undermining my people, just to protect him. Did you ever think then that we were husband and wife?" I looked directly at Victoria. "When you let him invade my life, trample my boundaries. So I'll let you taste what it feels like to be stabbed in the back by someone closest to you. One love is gone. I have to protect my own interests, don't I? Victoria retorted heatedly. I didn't betray you. My relationship with Ethan is purely professional. How could you do something like this because of these misunderstandings? Tince's business. This isn't a game. 10 misunderstandings? I scoffed. The hurt you caused me, was that fake? Once trust is destroyed, it can't be recovered. I stood up, looking at her and stating, word by word, Victoria Quinn, let's get a divorce. Having said this, I straightened my back and walked out of the Quinn family home. At that moment, I felt clearer and lighter than ever before. 15 Victoria chased after me. She grabbed my arm, preventing me from getting into my car. Sincere, let's go home and talk and can't just leave like this. Her voice held pleading, even panic. I shook her hand off. Which home? The one you've allowed outsiders to enter freely? Or the one where you accused me just to protect someone else? But she insisted on pulling me into her car. We sped back to the home we once shared. Opening the door, the living room felt somewhat empty. Some of my personal belongings had already been packed and removed by me earlier. Seeing the sparse living room seemed to agitate Victoria further. She whirled around, grabbing my shoulders. Sincere, don't do this to me. Her eyes were filled with devastation, and no, I was wrong. I was wrong. I shouldn't have indulged Ethan, making you feel wronged, and shouldn't have said those hurtful things. I just felt he was like my brother. Insha, I apologize. I'm apologizing to you. Please don't leave me. Don't talk about divorce, okay? Her eyes welled up. The usually strong woman looked so vulnerable now. In the past, I might have softened, but now I just looked at her calmly. Victoria Quinn, it's too late. Your indulgence of Ethan Larkin completely destroyed my feelings for you and the last shred of hope I had for this marriage. And as for Ethan Larkin resembling your brother, I shook my head, finding it utterly absurd. I am not a substitute for your brother, and neither is Ethan Larkin. So you can't project your guilt about your brother onto others, and use that as an excuse to hurt the person closest to you. One in business matters, I continued. It's just my way of protecting myself and ending this mistaken relationship. And you pushed me here step by step. You destroyed everything between us with your own hands. There's really no going back for us. I gently pushed her away. Let's just let each other go, Victoria. 16 Victoria didn't agree to the divorce. She started trying various ways to win me back. She transferred Ethan Larkin out of the president's office. Soon after, she found an excuse to fire him completely. The move was swift and decisive, as if wanting to sever all ties immediately. She started coming home frequently. Even though I was cold towards her, she persisted in staying. She would try cooking dishes I had mentioned liking before, buy books I had casually said I enjoyed. She would wait up for me when I worked late, just like she used to. Once, she came home completely drunk. She stood outside my door, calling my name over and over, begging for forgiveness. But the damage was done, the trust shattered. No amount of reconciliation attempts felt anything but hollow. During my persistent push for a divorce, Ethan Larkin actually sought me out. He looked much shabbier, his eyes filled with resentment and bitterness. Gone was his former composure and decency. His tone was sharp, sincere, sterling. You must be pleased with yourself, huh? When you ruined everything for me just because I got in your way. You think you've won. Victoria doesn't even love you, she just... I cut him off coldly, Mr. Larkin, you chose this path yourself. Son, you tried to take shortcuts, coveting things that don't belong to you, so you must bear the consequences. As for Victoria and me, it's none of your business. I paused, looking at his pale, distorted face. Instead of resenting others here, perhaps you should reflect on why you ended up in this position. With that, I walked straight past him. His resentful shouts followed me. 17. Regardless of Victoria's efforts, I insisted on the divorce. Meanwhile, some of my strategic business moves continued to exert pressure on Quinn Corp. After several months of stalemate, Victoria finally realized that the marriage was truly beyond repair. The light in her eyes gradually dimmed, and she looked much more haggard. Finally, she agreed to the divorce. On the day we signed the papers, Victoria and I sat opposite each other in silence. The moment my pen left my name on the document, I felt a wave of relief. This marriage, which had drained my energy and filled me with disappointment and pain, had finally come to an end. Walking out of the registry office, Victoria stood behind me and called my name. Sincere. Her voice was choked with emotion. I didn't turn back, just said softly, "Goodbye, Victoria Quinn." Then I walked towards my car. From this moment on, our lives would head in different directions. 18 after the divorce, news about Ethan Larkin gradually surfaced. To completely distance herself, Victoria offered him no help after firing him. Due to the scandal of interfering in his superior's marriage and causing significant turmoil, his reputation in the industry was completely ruined. Virtually no reputable company would hire him. I heard he drifted between several short-lived jobs. Eventually, he left the city. The ambitious young man who once dreamed of reaching the sky in a single bound ultimately paid a heavy price for his greed and scheming. Victoria's life also underwent significant changes. For her, losing me wasn't just losing a husband. It meant the long-standing business alliance between the Quinn and Sterling families suffered irreparable cracks. While it didn't cause Quinn Corp to collapse immediately, the company faced numerous setbacks in its subsequent development. She herself became more withdrawn and hardened. She poured almost all her time into work. She later tried contacting me a few times through mutual friends, but I chose to avoid or decline each time. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be healed. As for me, having completely broken free from that suffocating past, I embraced my new beginning. Using the assets from the divorce settlement and the resources of the Sterling family, I successfully launched several independent investment projects. I carved out a brand new world for myself. My life became free and fulfilling, never lacking admirers or partners. But I preferred my current state of independence. I began planning new business ventures, exploring a wider world, making like-minded friends, broadening my horizons. I became the person I truly wanted to be. End.